and most successful companies share one thing: they develop their people. The Success Launch Point makes it simple with on-demand courses, live coaching, and a thriving professional community. Your team will gain confidence, sharpen skills, and deliver more value, while staying loyal to the company that invests in them. To take your workforce to the next level, check out modernobserver.com/launchpoint.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
I'm doing fantastic. We are already in the home stretch to wrap up the year, and I cannot believe how quickly this year has gone. But part of the reason that it seems time goes so quickly is because our attention is elsewhere. It's on every distraction, notification, and that's what we're going to talk about today is the strategic advantage of doing deep work, how to do it, why we should do it, and quite frankly, what it is, because a lot of folks are not familiar with the concept.
Yeah, I mean, first when I saw that, I thought we were going to be talking about deep sea divers and so on and so forth. But really, it's kind of like doing that anyway, because in order to do that kind of work, you really got to concentrate a whole lot, and that's what this is all about. All about.
Yes, it is. Deep work in a nutshell. And the term itself was coined by Cal Newport in his book Deep Work, but the concept predates him. And essentially what it is a time to focus where you're not being interrupted, you're not dealing with emails and notifications and texts, and you're putting your focus on and concentration on a single task. Now, what that task is obviously can change, but there are some great examples of folks doing deep work. And yeah, it's been a while since we brought the book up, but way back when we talked about the book, The E-Myth Revisited. And Michael Gerber has a concept that he describes as working on your business, not in your business. Well, the time you need to work on your business is deep work. That's where the strategy is done. The thought processes are uninterrupted. And there are many famous entrepreneurs and even not entrepreneurs who have used deep work to great benefit. J.K. Rowling used it when she was writing the Harry Potter novels. Ralph Waldo Emerson famously got away from everything in order to write. Bill Gates routinely spends a week or two away from everything. And in fact, it was on one of these deep work sessions where he was isolated from technology that he realized that Microsoft, this is going back a couple of decades, Microsoft was in danger of missing the boat on the internet. And that was when he changed the company's strategy to start taking Netscape seriously. So the time you're spending on deep work yields benefits much further out than immediate. This is not something for immediate gratification, although that does occur. This is where you take the time to really think things through, to focus on what's going on, what the situations are, and come up with novel approaches to deal with them. So when you need to change strategy or enhance the strategy of your business, when you're going through major traumatic events in your life, deep work is where you can find solutions.
Yeah. You mentioned Cal Newport, and obviously, when I got the topic from you today, I went on, and the very first thing I got when I looked at the concept of deep work was Cal Newport. And basically, his definition was deep work is the ability to focus with undivided concentration on a cognitively demanding task. And I went in there, and there's a couple of just very, very simple diagrams. Google deep work and you come up with the AI thing. I mean, there is a diagram here of deep work, and the opposite of deep work is shallow work. Basically, you have cognitive tasks in deep work where professional activities require a lot of brain power. Non-cognitive, basically, is just going through minor duties, just kind of coasting through things. Deep work is distraction free, basically laser focused, and you map out the time just like you talked about Bill Gates doing that to do that versus often being distracted. And then third, it's value added. It creates new value, generating high quality output versus non-value added. And you can download these diagrams there. And then there's a brain thing, and they got the deep work that looks really cool, and the shallow work, which has the other things. But I mean, one of the things that really worked for me is having diagrams in front of me, and you can look at that. But if you just really think about it, it's just hunkering down and doing things of value. And we've talked a lot about planning and putting together your to-do list and starting out with the end goal in mind and the tasks that you're going to be doing it. And obviously, once you have those tasks listed, deep work is the way you're going to get them accomplished.
Yes. And, a while back on the podcast, we talked about time management, and specifically, we talked about a concept called time blocking. And one of the blocks that we discussed was a strategic block. And you didn't need to put more than one a week or so, but it was a 3-hour block. And this is blocking out for deep work. That's exactly what that block was for. And there's certain things you need to do to prepare for deep work. And the first is to turn off your phone. Nothing is going to happen that's so important during this block that you can't get back to them when you're done. Now, obviously, if you are in a client-centered business and all of your clients tend to have time-sensitive needs first thing in the morning, you're not going to schedule that time for deep work. You'll schedule it later in the day when all of that has been dealt with. But you need to shut off your phone. Second is you need to turn off all of the notifications on your computer, especially if you're doing your deep work on the computer. Now, if you are, the only tools you should be using are a word processor or a spreadsheet. That's it. You should not launch a web browser because that right there is going to start taking you down rabbit holes. You should not be using AI. You should essentially have no contact during this period with the outside world. You don't want distractions. You certainly don't want social media notifications. It's about focus. It's about taking the time to really go deep into one thing, whatever that problem or opportunity is. This is your chance to really go deep and follow where your mind goes, plan things out. But deep work has unfortunately, in today's information society, when it's needed more than ever, has actually become so rare that the ability to do deep work is now a strategic advantage, not just for business owners, but also in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, the distractions now are a whole lot more than they were when you and I were first getting into the business world and so on and so forth. So that is definitely a challenge. But basically, why deep work is important, obviously, if you turn everything off except having a word processor and a spreadsheet going, your productivity is going to go up. You're going to achieve a lot more high quality output in a whole lot less time. You're also going to be able to develop new skills rapidly. Um, and that will also give you a competitive edge. The ability to work becomes increasingly rare and valuable because most people can't even do that. And once you start seeing the results from that, we talk about this in a lot of different areas, but your professional and personal fulfillment and feeling good about what you are accomplishing is there. And there's nothing better than to pat yourself on the back at the end of the day for a good day done that's productive and basically from the heart rather than just because the gun's to the head.
That's so true. And, doing deep work isn't just about getting rid of distractions, it is about the focus. And in Newport's book, he actually tells the story of someone who decided to teach himself how to code. And he did it by focusing on textbooks and not even having a computer in the room when he was doing it. And he focused on the textbooks, he learned the lessons, and then once he was comfortable with it and put the deep work in, that was when he went on the computer and actually started to apply things. So there's no need to even have a computer on while you're doing this. You can do everything you want with a book, pad and paper, pad and pen. Get rid of the electronics, get rid of the background sounds. Most of the stories of people doing more extreme examples of deep work actually have them going into the wilderness, into cabins where nobody's going to drop by, where they don't have cell phone service. And this is not a new concept. Carl Jung did this while he was developing his psychological theories. He actually had a remote office that he would go to where nobody could bother him. He couldn't see patients, and he would just focus on the research. Now, obviously, this is, BC, before computers. So it was a lot easier to get away from distractions, and the distractions weren't as pervasive. So it really does take an effort now to put in time of deep work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love going back to your time blocking and actually scheduling that in because that's not something where you're just going to turn on the switch and be able to do that all the time. But just like anything else, if you can develop a habit where it becomes second nature for you to actually be doing deep work from time to time, that's really a way to get going with that. And if you can start setting those up as far as the time blocks, maybe an hour, you said a 3 hour time block per week. If you start simple and just keep that going, but have that down and it's part of your daily routine, whether it's first thing or whatever, I think that's a great, great way to get it going.
Yeah, it doesn't have to start with, isolating yourself for a week. Take an hour or two and turn off all the distractions. You will find that you are so much more productive. And in some cases, deep work will actually come more naturally. My first job out of college was in investor relations, and I had a dual role, and I was doing the investor relations part of it, but I was also the office's IT manager. And when I had to do some major work on the computers, I would come in on a Saturday because nobody was there. I didn't have to worry about anybody being on the system. This is long before the days of people being able to dial into the system. You know, you couldn't use the network unless you were in the office. And I would get done in a 3 to 4 hour time block what otherwise would have taken me a week to do if I tried to schedule it around all the distractions and all the other work and everybody else using the computer system. So there are concrete benefits to doing this, and increased productivity is among the top. You will be amazed at how much more you can get done when you're not checking social media, when you're not checking emails, when your phone isn't ringing, texts aren't coming in. You don't have coworkers coming by to chat. The whole function of deep work is unbroken time that you are focused, concentrating. And it has become difficult to do, not just because of all of the distractions we have now, and quite frankly, of the time it does take, but we are pre-programmed at this point to be distracted. We have been told for years, oh, you've got to multitask to get everything done, doing multiple things at work. Well, study after study has shown that multitasking not only doesn't work, it's a detriment to the work. Because what you're actually churning out is substandard work because you're not focused on it. And one of the things is, don't worry about the time. When we have a deadline, very often we're focused on what we can get done before that deadline. In deep work, you're not focused on how much work you can get done. You're focusing on the quality of the work. You're going deep into the task and doing it with precision, with intent, with attention. How many tasks do you do during the day that you don't even pay attention to? That it's just automatic. You go, oh, I'm checking email, I'm taking a phone call, I'm writing up a spreadsheet, I'm posting on social media. Now, even if these things are necessary for your work, they're still shallow work. Your brain is shut off when you're doing them. And because of that, the quality of your work deteriorates. So another big advantage of periodically stepping back and going into a deep work period is the quality of your work increases. And that's true whether you're doing a business strategy, figuring out a relationship problem, planning a trip. It doesn't matter what the task is. The quality is better when you focus and do the deep work.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I think we talked about developing routines, and we talked about doing this and doing that, and not even realizing that you did it. Could be driving and so on and so forth. And what really just hit home with me now, with your talking, it goes back to talking about what's our most personally productive time of day, and also what's the best opportunity for you to do it. I mean, I know that I work better in the mornings. You like working better at nights, but when you were looking at your job and you said, okay, nobody's here on Saturdays, and you work that into your routine to be there to get that done, something happened. And if you can do some self-analysis on yourself as to when you are being a whole lot more effective, which is the best time for you to do the deep work, and scheduling that into your routine in a time where you can turn off all the interruptions and so on and so forth, it's a good starting point. But just like anything else, you do need a starting point.
Yes, you do. And I'm glad you brought up routines, because routines and deep work go hand in hand. But you're not going to create a routine for doing deep work. When you're creating routines and processes and habits, these are mostly about the things that you're checking out of, that you're doing on autopilot. And we all have dozens of tasks every day that we can put down into a routine and just go about it without actually thinking about it. Deep work is the opposite of that. Deep work is about figuring out when to break the routine. It's about the focus on quality rather than simply getting something done. Now, ideally, a routine will turn out quality work. That's sort of the point of it, is to make it easier for you to generate that quality. But you can't do a routine when you're talking about things like strategic thinking, like market research, like dealing with a relationship issue. There's nothing routine about these things. So that's when deep work comes into play. And there are now actually co-working spaces that have deep work areas where there's no phones allowed. You're not allowed to take calls. You're not allowed to have your phone on in many cases, because the whole point of the area is for it to be quiet and for you to be able to focus on what you're thinking about and what you're doing. And that's another really important point of this, is the thought process. The big starting point for your deep work is a thought process. You're being more analytical. You're being less judgmental and looking at all of the details almost with a detachment. You're seeking the highest quality, the best outcome, but you're putting your own biases aside, because they're things that hold us back. And just to be clear, when I say biases, I'm simply talking about preferences. Usually when people talk about bias, it's, oh, racial bias and all of this. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just talking about your preferred method of doing things. That's what your bias is. And I always use an example. There's a local television station that their evening news, their bias is reporting fires. If there's a fire anywhere in the area, they'll have a story on it. They cover it. That's their bias. It's not good or bad. It's just how they work. When you're doing deep work, however, you want to get past what you do automatically. And the worst thing that you can think about when you're doing deep work is, well, I'll do it this way because that's the way we've always done it. The whole point of the deep work is to break out of the way you've always done it, to look at the drawbacks and the strengths of what you've done and find new ways to do it, new ways to raise the quality, new ways to streamline things, and to identify new challenges that may be on the horizon.
Yeah, I like that the phrase breaking out of the way that we've always done that. We always talk about humanity. We've created everything ourselves, but that doesn't mean that it's right or it's wrong. And what we're talking about here, the word focus is so, so important. And once you get into that stage, you can really figure out what is the most important thing and start working on it. So there's a lot of things to do as far as this goes. And as I said before, I mean, it's a lot tougher than it was in the past because there's so many distractions out there. But this has been a fantastic thing to be focusing on today.
And, I don't want to give the wrong impression about what the purpose of deep work is. It doesn't necessarily have to be something active. You're not necessarily solving a problem or creating some massive change in your business. Warren Buffett, very famously, uses deep work time simply to read. And because let's face it, what he does, he needs to have knowledge of so many different topics. So he will schedule days where he will go away into, to a hotel room, to a cabin, wherever it is, not give anybody the contact information, shut off his phone, and read. And I've also heard that Bill Gates does something similar just to keep up on what's new or to remind yourself of things you might have forgotten. Maybe there's a new topic that you want to explore because you think there may be benefits to it. All of that can be done in deep work times. Whereas if you use shallow time to try to learn something new, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. It's the situation most of us did in high school and college when the test is the next day and you're cramming to get everything in, and then right after the test you've forgotten all of it because you were only remembering enough to pass the test. With deep work, you're actually remembering what you learned. You're figuring out how you can apply it. And that becomes part of you rather than flying out of your head once you tell somebody about it, as we did on the test. So it doesn't have to be something active. It can simply be reading. It can be a time for meditation. It is for whatever you need to do, whether it's refreshing yourself by reading something new, solving a problem, figuring out where to go next, or just making a decision on a topic. All of that is fodder for deep work. And again, by doing this, you're actually putting yourself head and shoulders above your competition because most people aren't. Most people are stuck in shallow work and they're getting as much as they can done in as little time as possible without the focus, without the concentration. And that makes the difference. And having said that, we are just about out of time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
Well, the first thing I read from Cal Newport says deep work is the ability to focus with undivided concentration on a cognitively demanding task. Now, that cognitively demanding task is probably some type of a goal, but the key word here is focus. And if you just use the analogy of concentrating instead of coasting, which is what we all tend to do in day-to-day life, I like to use these little quick phrases: concentrate rather than coast. So focus is the word that gets it going.
Yes, it is. And I think that is the big takeaway this week is the benefits of focus and concentration are tremendous. And again, it's not just beneficial to you. If you're doing work on this, It's beneficial to the company, it's beneficial to the organization. If you're trying to figure out something with your family relationships, it's beneficial for your family. But even more important than that benefit is the fact that it is a strategic advantage to whatever you do, because so many people are just trying to find the quick fix instead of putting in the deep work and making lasting change. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.